Yes, good evening, good afternoon. This is Harlem Network News, and I'm Terry Wisdom. And as many of you know, Harlem Network News is a media platform. We started at the onset of COVID, and we are still here. Our mission is to really assure that Harlems of the world, and the world are informed, engaged, and called to action. And nothing could be more critical right now than that. In this time span, we started in 2020, it's 2025. And as a journalism and a media student, it was always, is the media the message or is the message the media? And now those lines are completely blurred. We are in a totally brave new world. But I wanted to, this is just a very serendipitous moment, but Harlem Network News is a part of Win with Black Women. And we have a guest that's here with us today in the person of Lisa Sanchez. And she is also a member of Win with Black Women. And we both have been on the call for 4 years. We didn't just get on the call the night the 34,000 women came on when the announcement came across that Vice President Kamala Harris was running for president of these United States. So it's just a connection. But one of the great things about Win with Black Women from a media perspective is that when we have our meetings, and we're still meeting, we were meeting 4 years before, and we continue to meet to address pertinent social and all kinds of news activities. But we're able to share, and often from one side of the country or one part of the world, we may not really know what is actually going on because mainstream media is very skewed in terms of what is reported, particularly for Black and Brown media. And there's just been, Black and Brown media is working on coming up, to get our funding, to get out there, to get back to those days of all the great press and Ebony and Jed and, all of the shows that represented us. But so it's very, very important. Our sister, Lisa Sanchez, lives in Altadena, California. And that is one area that had these natural disaster fires. And she lost her home, as did other neighbors. So without further ado, Lisa, please introduce yourself and just share who you are, whose you are, and what has gone on. We are so grateful to have you here to share and for us to see what we can do to support you. And thank you in this travesty for you taking the time as you regrouping to come on and talk with us.
Thank
Thank you,
you. Thank
Lisa.
you for that introduction. I really appreciate that. So, again, my name is Lisa Sanchez, and I have lived in Altadena, California since August 2016. But I want to also say that I am a native of Los Angeles, California. So I've lived there all of my life. And I remember as a kid saying, "Oh, I would love to live in that Pasadena area." And so, if you know California, Pasadena and Altadena are really neighbors. And as time went on, I had the opportunity to purchase a home in Altadena,
Okay.
and just a lovely, lovely community. And before I mention what happened to me in the fire, I want to just set the stage for the Pasadena, Altadena area. Like many areas going back to the 1950s, 1960s, these communities were predominantly white. And Altadena was one of those areas that really didn't suffer, if you will, redlining. It was one of those areas where Black folks could actually buy a home. And over time, when you think about the civil rights movement to now, and this terminology, white flight, a lot of areas experience white flight. So I'm not speaking out
Absolutely.
of turn. So
Mhm.
you know what I mean by that. Even where I
Mhm.
grew up in
Yes.
Baldwood Hills, white communities
Okay.
members left.
Absolutely.
That created an opportunity for Black folks and other people of color to move in. Altadena was one of those areas. So from the 60s when there was the white flight, that changed the demographics of Altadena. So from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s to now, Altadena is now very diverse.
Okay.
And over time, we're talking about generations of Black families who not only live there, but have businesses there, restaurants and barber shops and shops and all the things that as community members we patronize. Now, if you can imagine that with this fire, it has destroyed over 9,000 structures. That means that not only did people, Black folks in particular, lose their homes, they lost generational wealth, they lost that generational history, family upon family buying homes in Altadena, all lost in the fire. Okay, so that's just setting the stage for
Yes.
Altadena.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that because when you're in other parts of the country, and I'm Terry Wisdom, and this is Harlem Network News, and I am here with my sister Lisa Sanchez, and we're speaking about the fires in Altadena, and she was really just trying to share with us what the landscape looks like. I have a question. I've been to California and I have family and relatives that actually grew up in Compton. But literally, and I have one of my closest of friends. Her sister lives in Baldwin Hills, but she's a transplant from Washington D.C. But she's been out there all her adult life, really. But where is Baldwin Hills in proximity to Altadena?
Altadena. Okay.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Baldwin Hills. Altadena to Baldwin Hills is probably 30 minutes or less
Okay.
without traffic. You
Okay.
know, if you've been to LA, you
Okay.
know about the traffic. But
Okay.
from Altadena to Baldwin Hills,
Mhm.
it's nothing to get there. It's probably
Okay.
less than 30
Okay.
minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I have some perspective. I have some perspective, but and it's very interesting because I think this is helpful. Just this week on Louis Henry Gates, there was a great documentary about the Great Migration. And the first migration, I think, was a lot of people coming from the South. But the second migration was people come from the South, people come from all over. But it was like during World War II. And it was talking about how so many Black families migrated out to California. And
Yes.
that was because they were building, they were working on the aircraft carriers with Boeing. They came for work and, just coming from the South and, coming to California where there was beach and this and that. But there was a lot of conversation that was saying, I think it's like maybe in South Central Avenue, or that's where all the Blacks were concentrated and they didn't have enough space. And there was a lot of people not being able to move out of that area. And they spoke about Hattie McDaniels and how she bought a house, and I don't know where it was, and the other families who bought a house there, and the neighbors association like said Blacks couldn't live there, and these people literally went to jail, and were able to then get back in their house, through like Thurgood Marshall, so it's just interesting and the picture was painted that it was thriving, there was jazz, there was, all of the things that come with a neighborhood. So you were saying
Absolutely.
over 9,000 structures were destroyed.
Were
Oh,
absolutely destroyed, yes.
wow.
But I wanted to just say something about migration because
Okay, thank you.
my family migrated here. My dad from Ecuador came here as a 21-year-old young man,
Mhm.
met my mother who was here going to college. She came from Panama.
Okay.
So we were able to buy our first home in the Baldwin Hills area in 1971. That was my childhood home. So I understand that experience where when you think about people like my parents, they came here for the American dream. And so home ownership is definitely part of that American dream. And when you lose that part of your family history, it's devastating. So my house was supposed to be a legacy home, one that I would leave for my son and then he to his son.
Mhm.
And now we have to start that all over again.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because as we move into this time and we really open up our eyes, we are understanding, particularly for Blacks and people of color, that real estate is generational wealth and
Yes, it
passes
is.
down. And I don't know, I can't even call her name, but my daughter went to Howard University,
Mhm.
and she was in the fine arts, you know, when Chadwick Boseman was there. In fact, they were friends. My son went there too. Um, Tahaji, all of that. But one of her friends that was in fine arts, and her friend's husband is like on a few TV shows, but she grew up in Altadena. And she said she had just gone, I don't know what proximity she lives in, but she said we had just gone to help my family take down the Christmas decorations. And she said, and in whatever time, the whole house was burned. She was like, all my childhood memories, everything is gone. I mean, prayerfully, her family got out and they're alive. But this is the kind of devastation this is. She was like, we lived in that house as 50 years, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's something when you're literally running for your life, right?
Mm,
So we knew that the high winds were coming, and we're basically just sitting in the house, feeling the wind shake the
mhm,
house
mhm,
about,
mm.
and then all of a sudden the power went out at about 6:12 p.m.
Wow.
So for about an hour and change, we're sitting in the dark. We have no access to phones, no internet,
Mm,
just sitting in the dark with the phone light, the light that's on our cell phone, and a
mhm.
couple of candles going. And
Wow.
I asked my son to go retrieve the trash cans because I could hear them blowing
Rap.
down the street.
Okay.
So
Oh boy. Woo.
go get the trash can. So next
Mhm,
thing you know, he comes running into the house
mhm,
and he says, "Come look, come look." We go to the front yard
mhm.
and you can see the glow of the fire
Oh,
through the neighbors' trees.
oh my God. Woo.
Meanwhile, other neighbors are burning rubber out of their driveway.
Mm,
And the neighbor to my right said, "Did you get the alert?" And we said, "What alert?"
mm.
And it said, "Fast moving fire, evacuate immediately." So
Oh,
no city official told us anything. It was by the
OMG.
grace of just going out at the right
Mm,
time
mhm.
where the neighbors said, "Get
Those
out."
garbage cans
Otherwise,
rolling. Woo.
we would have been sitting ducks. And so
Ah,
literally we were running around the house packing an overnight bag. But I have to tell you, I never thought that it would get to this point. I
mhm,
thought we would just evacuate for the night
mhm. And come
and
on.
then come back.
Mm,
But
mm.
we would come back to a home that was completely destroyed by the fire. So there are 28 homes on my block that were designed by a well-known architect named
Okay.
Gregory Ian, and it
Uh-huh.
was a very special block of mid-century modern homes.
Mm,
So
mm.
of the 28 homes, 20 of them burned down, are completely destroyed.
Wow. Oh
Yes.
my goodness. That is were what in terms of if you know. Was anyone like killed or hospitalized or in the area? Or was everyone able to fortunately run for their lives?
Unfortunately, in this fire, we lost, I believe, 19 lives, if not more.
Oh my God.
Many of those, 17 of those in Altadena.
Mm,
We understand that there was an issue with the evacuation. So some folks were not evacuated until it was too late,
mm,
until the fire and the winds were just swirling around, and we lost lives. We should have never lost those many lives.
mhm. Okay.
And just story after story of people who couldn't get out, didn't have the means to get out.
Mm,
Two individuals, disabled and wheelchair bound, did
mhm.
not get out.
Okay.
Elderly people did not get out.
Wow. Okay. Well,
Just devastating.
before we go even any further, we just want to offer our condolences for all those who lost lives and our prayers. And, this is Harlem Network News, and we want the world to know what happened. It's very hard when you don't live in the environment to even imagine
Mhm.
a fire sweeping and it just taking everything. I mean, right now, in New York City, we don't really have that kind of thing. I think we were talking pre getting on the air, just saying that we experienced 911, and that was like unimaginable.
Right.
But we also, which I'm not sure what that's about, but we also in New York City, in the Bronx, in some parks, have experienced like some wildfires. And so I don't know if that's an arsonist or because it just doesn't seem right that and someone actually one of the park rangers lost their life in that situation, I believe. So we don't know in terms of the climate and this and that. Is it was you said you've lived in California, Baldwin Hills, all your life is 30 minutes from the
Yes.
Altadena.
Mhm.
So the question is, have there always been the wildfires happening in Altadena? Has this, is this a norm or?
Not in Altadena.
Mhm.
Other parts of California, yes, wildfires are a thing in California, like hurricanes are a thing in other parts of the world.
Right. Okay.
We get floods. That's a thing in
Mhm.
California, not to the extent that we've seen in New Orleans, for example. But we do have our own weather patterns. There's a song that says it never rains in Southern California. Well, it
Right.
does.
Okay. And
But
now
we
it's
definitely have the wildfires, and that is a
okay.
thing. We've not seen this in Altadena. We live in what's called the foothills. And when
Mm,
you look at the foothills, it's so far removed from our community that
mm,
you don't think it's ever going to touch down. But
wow.
the thing about this particular event was the high winds. Winds over 100 miles an hour. That's blowing fire, fire embers. And so the embers were just torching all of Altadena. They say about 90% of Altadena is gone.
Wow. 90%?
90%
Oh my
of
goodness.
Altadena is gone, as I understand it. And
Wow.
when you're driving down the street, my son and I took the opportunity to drive back to our house a couple, two, three times. And you're not just looking at some houses that are gone, you're looking at blocks upon blocks, streets upon streets of homes that are just gone, blocks that are gone. Or you might see some houses standing
Mhm.
and then the other ones are burned. It's the most bizarre thing you ever want to see.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Now you when as we were talking earlier, you were trying to explain Altadena versus the Palisades. So if you would, elaborate on that, because in mainstream media, we had been hearing about some of the wealthy people and wherever, losing their mansions and this and that. So what are we talking about?
Yeah. There's
What is that?
definitely, yeah, there's definitely a difference between a Palisades community and an Altadena community. Altadena community is lovely. We've got our McMansions too.
Mm-hmm.
Palisades is next level. You're talking 20, 15, 20, 30 million dollars homes. Homes that are sitting on, the top of a bluff, if you will, overlooking the ocean. It's that well-known street called Pacific Coast Highway that is connected to Malibu, Palisades. It's next level living. I will say that I went to Palisades High School, and so I know this community very well. Part of my high school burned, but I know
Wow.
when they say that the Gelsons burned down, I know that Gelson's very easily because we used to go there on our lunch break. So
Okay.
the amount of wealth in the Palisades is quite different from the experiences in Altadena. But I will say, because of Palisades' wealth, they got a lot of news coverage, I think, over
Over
Altadena.
Altadena. Okay.
The press
Okay.
conferences were Palisades always led the way. And
Okay.
then you get a little snippet of Altadena.
Okay.
I
Okay.
even said on an Instagram to one of the media outlets, don't forget about us here in Altadena.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. And that is why it was very important, when I heard you on the meeting, just speak and say what had happened. And, of course, I was just, my heart went out in terms of you losing your home, but understanding the magnitude of it. And that's why Black press matters, because our stories matter. And it's critical that we tell our own stories, because a lot of times we're going to get overshadowed. We're not going to matter. And it's just, the disparities that are happening in this country, based on race and racism. So, very important to, get that story out. So, since that time, has there been any more coverage or getting the word out about Altadena? Thank you for, painting a picture of what Altadena is, and the fact that there were many thriving, Black businesses. You said it was a pretty interracial, community, and
Yeah, diverse.
basically at this time is diverse and hadn't really been experiencing, the redlining and all of that kind of thing at this time. Had it always been, a place where people could move without any racial barriers, or is this just in recent times?
So I would say I'm new to Altadena, but
Okay.
when I understand the history of Altadena, that for Black folks, that sort of ease of movement, that ease of buying a home, I understand was easier in Altadena versus Pasadena or other
Okay.
areas. And so Altadena was that place where Black folks could
Hmm.
buy a home.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the biggest challenge right now with any news story, for a whole week, these fires took over the news, right?
Uh-huh.
Now that has simmered. And
Right.
what I want folks to know is I don't want that story to go away. When the cameras go away, I want folks to understand that there are people who are still suffering, that there are still many people who want to rebuild, who are
Hmm.
at different levels of knowledge
Hmm.
and resource. I'm not talking about intellect, don't misunderstand me.
Right.
Knowledge.
Knowledge about
Even
what's
even
going
for
on.
me,
Mhm.
understanding the building process, the permitting process, building to code, I know zero about that
Right.
compared to someone else who might have more resources or access to this
Mhm.
type of knowledge. And so I will say that the infrastructure has been set up. The resource center, there's now a new building resource for those who want to rebuild. There's an office in Altadena. Don't know the location. I believe it's on Woodbury Avenue, but that is available. I want people to know that they should have reached out by FEMA or to FEMA by now. The
Okay.
American Red Cross, they should have reached out by now to file claims so that they can get some financial support. Every dollar matters because if you're like me, you're eating out every day,
Okay. I
you
hear you.
have to rebuild a whole new wardrobe. I was humbled by the fact that a day or two or three after the fire, I was still wearing the same outfit
Okay.
that I ran for my life
That's
in,
putting it in real terms.
right? That's the
Yeah.
perspective that I want
Wow.
people to understand, where you've got
Wow.
to now get your mindset together to at least go to a store and buy some new underwear and pajamas.
Wow. Wow.
Right?
That's
Oh,
really
I still have
beautiful.
a job. Thank goodness. Now I've got to go get some clothes
Hmm.
so I can show up for work.
Wow.
Right? It's an experience that I never thought
Mm. Yeah, this
would
is a lot.
happen to me.
Now, a majority of the people, how are they surviving? And we'll focus on the Altadena, because I think that the Palisades or whatever, the level of wealth, and it's still devastation when you lose your house. There are wealthy people who lost their lives. They're having to go through the same process, but I believe that if you have more liquidity, it may be easier for you. Maybe you have another home, or I don't but how are the Altadena people like surviving? Where are they? Have they gone to relatives, or what are some of the scenarios
Yeah.
that folks are dealing with?
Yeah, it's all of that. Some people, as of today, are still in shelters, in
Hmm.
particular at the Pasadena Convention Center, which
Okay.
they were going to close today.
Ah.
They were going to close that today without relocating folks. And so there was a big pushback on that. So now they have extended it for one more week so that they
Hmm.
can find another location. So some people are at shelters, other people are staying in hotels like I am. Other
Okay.
people are staying with relatives. Like I'm separated from my family. My son and his family, he's at their in-law or at his in-laws. I'm at a hotel.
Hmm.
Some people have found rentals. I'm still trying to get a rental,
Okay.
and there's
Okay.
price gouging that
Okay.
is going on. So
Mm.
there's more demand for housing than there is supply.
Okay.
And when there is supply, it gets taken quickly by
Okay.
people who are willing to pay
Right. Yeah, we
the
did
right
see
price.
a little bit of that on we're here in New York City. So, our local news is going to be our local news, and then we'll be watching, like world news, trying to watch everything we can. But I did see a bit about the price gouging,
Yes.
and, like whoever was willing to just pay whatever money they could get it, so that's got to be super, super hard. But does it appear that a lot of the people of the Altadena community want to come back and rebuild? Do you all want to stay in the area? The businesses, how do you do that? What about the schools? What are the young people who are in school doing?
Oh
What
my
what is
gosh.
happening?
It is overwhelming what is happening right now because at least a handful of schools that I know about, including a school that was literally at the corner and around the corner from my house, they burned down. And so those students have to find other learning locations. So that's one
Okay.
thing.
Mhm.
Um, the question about whether to rebuild or not depends in large part on whether you were insured. And if you were insured, are you well insured or underinsured?
Okay.
Some insurance companies, before this fire happened had canceled people's fire coverage. So they
Mhm.
may not even be covered for this
Okay.
fire unless they go to FEMA or some of these other
Mm.
funding sources. The big question I have is whether I rebuild. And if I rebuild, what am I rebuilding to? When I don't know if other
What
people are coming back.
right. Okay.
So what I have to recognize is that Altadena will never be the same. That mom and pop shop that was on the corner may
Mhm.
not come back.
Okay.
That restaurant may not come back. The hardware store, is it coming back?
Mhm.
It's the $10 million question. But I
Okay.
do know that there is a campaign of Altadenians who say, don't sell your land, come back, rebuild. Let's, dare I say, make Altadena great again.
Okay. Oh my
Make
goodness.
Altadena great again.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, last question. You're on the West Coast and we're on the East Coast, so we're gonna wind down. But I think we've kind of covered everything. How are the public officials weighing in and dealing with this and supporting you? I mean, obviously there's the governor. I don't know if there's a mayor of Altadena or how that's all working, and we have council people. How is the government structure helping the people?
A great question. I would say that city and local government, they have shown up. They have shown up at press conferences and they've said what might be the right thing.
Okay. Okay.
But the true test is whether they live up to those words.
Okay.
So there are resources that are available, like when they set up the Pasadena Resource Center, that was great. You could
Okay.
go in there, get a social
Mhm,
security card, replace
mhm.
your passport.
Okay.
That was great. Now we have to see if they are true to their word when they say, for those who want to rebuild, that they will make the permit process easier, that they will remove the red tape.
Mhm.
That remains to be seen. But I will say that they've been there, and let's hope they stay when the
Okay.
cameras go away.
I gotcha. And what about on the Palisades side? How are they dealing? What are those people thinking about? Are their public officials your public officials? Is different things happening there?
Different people, different people. However, as far as I know, the resources are also made available, even in the Palisades where they're
Mhm.
wealthier and so forth. They still have those resources. I'm more connected to Altadena because that's where I want to put my energy in.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, thank you
yeah.
for sharing. What can we do? This world community, and I think of Altadena, since you've given me a picture of it, that Altadena in some instances is one of the Harlems of the world. And like I said, I just watched this great show on the Great Migration, seeing all of Black people from all over coming after World War II to California, and a lot of people thriving and so on and so forth, and
Yeah.
changing their life, building generational wealth with a fight. But what how can we help? Obviously talking about it, getting the word out, giving you all some coverage that is not going to happen, maybe, or hasn't happened, and it'll also spoke out to our other audiences. And once again, we're telling our story, telling our own
Yeah.
story. So what can
That's
we
a
do to
great
help?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't want folks to forget about us.
Mhm.
We have to rebuild Altadena. There is a history there of our people that we need to preserve, and it's generations. As I mentioned earlier, there's one story of the 9 generations that I mentioned, where it's family after family after family who bought homes there. They all lost their homes, as I
Okay.
mentioned.
Wow.
But it's stories like that. And
Mhm.
then there are other stories of folks who are not Black, they are Asian or they are Middle
Yes,
Eastern, and
yes,
right?
yes,
So because
yes.
that's Altadena is
That kind of
what
mix.
America looks like.
Right.
My own block, we got to
Mhm.
dinner. We got together for dinner this week.
Okay,
And when
beautiful.
you look in that room, everybody of every race,
Mhm,
ethnicity, LGBTQIA plus community,
mhm,
like
mhm,
that's our
mhm.
block.
Okay.
And that's what Altadena is.
Mm, mhm,
And we have got to bring that back,
mhm,
support us. Um, we've got to keep this story going
mhm. Okay,
and
so
keep it active. Yeah.
microcosm of the world. So there any agencies or like funds or places or initiatives that you can share? And if you can't, we can't. If you can't right now on the spot, we can certainly find out because we're going to also be doing some story about this in our newsletter. Try to get it out there and do what we can. But thank you for just being so brave and taking out the time. And, it's hard to unpack when you said you had the same clothes and, you have to buy new clothes. And, some people doing that is probably very difficult. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
a lot.
It's very interesting. I started this new year. I don't like to do New Year's resolutions. I
Hmm.
like to set intentions.
Okay.
And so right around January 1, I said, I don't want to be consumed with all the clothes and shoes that I have, all that
Mhm.
designer stuff, my Gucci,
Okay.
my this, my that. I didn't want to be consumed with that. And I had vowed not to put my money there. So that
Okay.
was January 1.
All right.
By January 8th, everything I owned was burned and destroyed in the
Purged.
fire.
Purged.
Did that for me.
Okay.
Well,
It,
that was handled.
okay. Okay. Last question, and then we're going to have you do a closing statement. But with this new administration coming in the person of Donald Trump and all of the things that have happened since the inauguration, I mean, we went through the election, there's a lot just taking that in. And, Vice President Kamala Harris not winning the presidency, but there was a win in terms of people coming together and the movement and people looking at what's happening. So that is a great win.
Yeah.
But since this inauguration, things have been just flying, flying, flying. The world is not what we knew, things that are being taken down that we never thought could be taken down. So, how has this administration, from your purview, been dealing with this situation in Altadena, in the Palisades? What are they doing? Because I heard a lot of I guess political criticism from Donald Trump saying, well, they didn't handle this right. What are you seeing? What's real for you?
Yes, and I'm really just trying to like disconnect from
Mhm.
any hurtful statements that number
Of
47
course.
is
Okay.
spewing out.
Of course.
I do know that Governor Newsom had a meeting with number 47
Okay.
about relief for California.
Okay.
And that is all I know. I should probably
Okay.
be more in tune, but
Okay.
I have, with all that is going on, I'm hoping that we can rely on our governor to meet with this administration to get the resources that we need.
Okay.
And I'll just put a period on that
All
because
right. Okay.
I
Okay.
could probably
Well, thank
say
you. I don't
some
want to
more
call it
things.
Harlem Network News. We don't want to put any more burden. So let's wrap this up. You are truly a warrior sister, doing what you have to do, and of course, because we share that camaraderie, comradeship with Black women. And so that's what it is. When we fight, we win. So there we
Right,
are.
we went.
There we are. So, would you like to just make a closing statement? And like I said, we will stay connected. We're going to try to not let this disappear into the dust. Like now we're on to the new story, And
Exactly.
so I'm going to, try to get some information from what can happen. And I also have the same very close friend that does volunteer for the Red Cross. So, maybe I can connect you with her,
Yes.
and, somehow, but that's what we've got to do. But what would you like to say if there's a closing statement? What would you like?
Yeah. I will say this. The fire destroyed my house. It destroyed the car. So those were things. What it did not destroy was the fact that I still have my family and we are still connected and able to love each other. That fire also did not destroy my inner fire to fight and go along this journey. The other thing is this. After all of the devastation of my house completely destroyed, the one thing that was standing erect was a corner piece of my house where I named my house. It was the street number, and then I named my house
Oh,
Una Vida Pacifica.
all
Una
right.
Vida Pacifica in Spanish is a peaceful life. That was
Oh,
standing erect.
wow.
And I'm going to take that as a sign that on the other side of this journey, my family and I and the Altadenians, that we will get back to a peaceful life again.
Okay. So there's nothing else to say. Thank you so much, Lisa Sanchez, and everyone else. Please stay tuned to Harlem Network News. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We need that to get to the next level in this 2025, out of whatever the conditions are, and still we rise. So support Black media. We're going to be doing some major funding campaigns to take us to the next level. Right now, it's a donation. Maybe there'll be some subscriptions, Zelle, GoFundMe, all of those kinds of things. But we got to take it up a lot of notches. And that is our intention. And you can reach us directly at 646-261-5397. And you can email us at harlemnetworknews@gmail.com. And I love this cross pollination. We kind of got into this Zoom and tech world during COVID, and we all had to get our PhD in it very quickly. But there are some great things about it in terms of us all being able to connect. So thank you, and our prayers and blessings for you. And please keep the stories coming. Keep the stories coming, and keep hope alive. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. Take
Thank
care.
you for having me.
Prayers and blessings for you and the neighborhood and all of us, because we're all connected. So it impacts all of us. So thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.